Crazy hype is already on the rise for this next winter storm set to bring snow out of the west and into the central plains, Ohio and Tennessee valleys, as well as the mid-Atlantic and northeast into the week ahead. Will it be a bomb of snow though, like some headlines are saying? I'll bust that hype and give you the real forecast right here in this video. In addition to that, I've also got an update and a more in-depth look at the expanding cold air mass and Arctic blast set to last for much of the week ahead. All that's coming right up in the next 12 minutes, so let's get right into it. Here we are with a custom graphic overview I've made for you, looking at what is expected out of this next winter storm as we go through the next 4 days or so, through around February 20th, where our origin zone is going to be as we go into the 17th and 18th, Monday and Tuesday out west. Snow, especially in the higher elevations of places like the Mountain West, including Idaho, Montana, and then through the Rockies. Eventually, snow is expected in a stripe that's going to be mostly moving west to east from the Central Plains to the Ohio Valley to the Mid-Atlantic points in between. As you get closer to the East Coast, though, that's where your snow totals and the certainty in exact numbers becomes a little bit more vague. Same goes with your amounts of ice, although ice is generally expected from Oklahoma all the way over to the Carolinas and points in between. Rain and storms down closer to the Gulf Coast. Before we jump into some of the model guidance on this system, here's a little bit of a closer look at the snow zones anticipated, with light snow expected anywhere from parts of central South Dakota all the way over possibly at least to southern Maine if the current forecast holds, but it's a little bit more questionable up there into the northeast. It's going to be an iffy type of system. Once again, I know it always seems like that, but it will be in a place like Long Island. Better chance for more moderate snow, though, anywhere from Nebraska to Kansas, through Missouri, northern Oklahoma, northern Arkansas, through Tennessee, parts of Illinois, Indiana, into Kentucky, West Virginia, the Delmarva region, and we could also see some isolated patches of heavier snow. Let's go ahead and start that breakdown with the latest run of the European model. Right, here we are looking at the latest run of the European model to time this system out, starting with its origin, which of course is going to be out into the west and into some parts of the central plains as we go as early as our overnight hours of tonight on our Sunday and into parts of our Monday, February 17th of 2025. Overall, it looks like with the current forecast, we're going to see some light to moderate rain down there, not too significant of impacts in parts of Washington and Oregon's valleys, with snow transitioning out of those zones through Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and some light snow, and this could accumulate even though it will be light, extending on out here into parts of Nebraska, Iowa, as well as northern Missouri. You're going to have no problem for the snow accumulating very quickly, especially on those grassier and colder surfaces out here as you come out of parts of the Mountain West and the Central Plains with anything we get as we go out of Monday and into our Tuesday. But it's really as we get into our Tuesday, early to mid-morning, where I think we're going to start to see our real winter storm that I'm talking about in this video pick up, with our light to moderate snow moving out of parts of Colorado, Nebraska, and then especially starting to come on down here into Kansas and Missouri, where through a lot of the day Tuesday you're about to see, we're likely to have, especially in the southern parts of those states, some pretty hefty snowfall rates going on. Let's push out of parts of the mid-morning time frame Tuesday and into the middle of the afternoon and evening, where by the time we go from 4, 5 to 6 to 7 o'clock on Tuesday, it looks like parts of southeastern Kansas, the southwestern half of Missouri, the northern half or so of Oklahoma, and the northern third of Arkansas really looks to be the bullseye area for some heavy snow around that time frame. Ice down here into southern and central parts of Oklahoma, and transitioning out of parts of central and into southern Arkansas as we go through our Tuesday evening and into the night. Of course, with colder temperatures, we will see that ice line pivot a little bit further south. By the way, down there in parts of Texas and Louisiana along the Gulf Coast, we could be watching some stronger storms transitioning from west to east as we go through the overnight and into our Wednesday morning, while ice continues to be a factor in parts of Arkansas and Mississippi, with snow to the north of that, continuing into some parts of southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, and then starting to shift on over here through some extent. We'll see how much of southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and into Kentucky and Tennessee. Best chance, again, for you to be right in the middle of that moderate stripe of snow as we go into our Wednesday morning is going to be through the heart of Kentucky and Tennessee. Then we start to see some discrepancies in our model and ensemble guidance. What you notice is that on this guidance anyway, it looks like we're going to see some moderate to heavy snow trying to transition through the central and southern Appalachians, maybe even as far back to the south as North Georgia and the western Carolinas into our Wednesday, right through the middle of the morning and into the middle of the day. Meanwhile, heavier rainfall. It looks like this is going to be a pretty big rain event, or a quick hitting heavy rain event anyway, down through parts of Alabama, Georgia, the low country of South Carolina, and back into North Florida. The discrepancies between the Euro and GFS and other model guidance really increases from here, though, and I don't want to make any official calls at this point in time with what happens, especially as we go through late Wednesday into Thursday. Current projection out of this guidance is that we see some low pressure forming offshore, developing a much heavier band of snow somewhere out of North Carolina and on up here towards the coast of Virginia, up into Maryland, Delaware, and eventually pivoting on up there towards New Jersey. Again, once we start to see the snow get past the central Appalachians, that's where it really becomes questionable what happens with this low pressure that tries to form off the coast. But one thing that's for sure, this could be a heavier system, and it's going to form pretty quickly, and the pressure could drop at a quick enough rate for this to be what's called a bomb cyclone, where pressure drops at least 24 millibars in 24 hours. The question with that is going to be, though, if the systems become stronger, where's it going to be? Because this guidance indicates most of that heaviest snow would be just off the coast there of southern New England and the mid-Atlantic coast as we go into our Thursday morning. That's something we're going to track, and I'll talk about some of those possible snow totals we could see with discrepancies in that region just in a minute. Let's start with those snow and ice totals that we have much more short-range confidence in, though, by looking at this National Digital Forecast Database graphic from the National Weather Service, starting here out west as we just go through the end of our Monday, and then as we get through the middle of the day Tuesday. Look at some of these snow totals, higher elevations there into some parts of the mountain ranges like the Cascades there into Washington, down here into central Oregon. Many spots in those highest peaks getting upwards of a foot. Same will go here through some parts of central and northern Idaho, parts of western and southern Montana, down here into the Idaho-Wyoming border, and then with these mountains here on the west side of Denver there in the Rockies into Colorado. Then with your snowfall forecast, for now anyway, preliminarily with these totals out here into the Central Plains, here's what the Digital Forecast Database is projecting as we get through the end of our Tuesday and then through most of the day Wednesday. This would cover anything that happens, especially as far east as places like Missouri, into parts of Illinois and far western Kentucky and Tennessee. For now, it looks like as you come out of parts of eastern Wyoming, down here into parts of far southwestern South Dakota, and then through the majority of Nebraska, most spots picking up about 3 to 6 inches over the course of the next, especially 48 to 60 hours. Then we start to see our snowfall, of course, extending down here as we get through a lot of Tuesday and into Wednesday into parts of Kansas and Missouri, where it looks like most spots in central and northern Kansas about 3 to 6 inches. Better chance for you to get out of the 3 to 6 inches as you come out of parts of northern Missouri and Kansas, and then down here into the far southern parts of these states. We'll look at that right along the Kansas-Oklahoma border, the Missouri-Arkansas border, and even over there into southern Illinois. The current forecast would project more like 6 to 12 through some of these zones. I would argue that more spots than not could be getting a foot in this circled area if the forecast continues to hold. So that's something to watch. By the way, a few inches of snow would at least be possible with this as well as you get down there towards parts of central Oklahoma over to central Arkansas. With that region being said, I want to go ahead and show you some of the early projected totals, not a final forecast by any stretch here, but this shows some of the discrepancies between your European model and then this blended GFS ensemble guidance as well as you push into areas east. Keep in mind that a lot of these bluer areas are underdoing the totals just a little bit because, of course, when you blend a bunch of pieces of guidance together, it's going to average out to a little bit of lower numbers. So as you come through far southern parts of Illinois, Indiana, and into a lot of Kentucky and Tennessee, expect these numbers that show about 3 to 5 for most spots to be a little bit closer to 6, 7, 8, especially on that isolated higher end, especially into western Kentucky, southern Illinois. I think those areas have a better bet of closer to 6 to 8 inches of snow. Then as you get on over here, as we go through Wednesday into parts of the central and southern Appalachians, at least 1 inch to 3 through parts of West Virginia, western Virginia, and then back there into western North Carolina. From there is where I think we start to see our totals pick up once again, though, as we get that coastal low pressure to develop. The European model had some of that more closer to the coast of North Carolina. The GFS guidance is saying it's going to be closer to the Virginia and Delmarva shores before we start to see this pivot offshore, not really impacting heavily, if at all, parts of New Jersey, up there into Long Island, up there into southern New England by the time we get through our Thursday morning. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. Even if we get closer to 3 to 6, or maybe even upwards of 6 to 10 inches of snow in an isolated pocket there of eastern Virginia or parts of Maryland, look at what happens. This guidance as well, indicating most of that heaviest snow with whatever this bomb cyclone may be, stays offshore. So even though there's some discrepancy in the exact forecast totals and who sees the heaviest somewhere near North Carolina, Virginia, up to the Delmarva, it looks like most of the heaviest snow goes offshore from there and stays south of southern New England. So for now, there's no need to hype this up unless we see some changes, and I'll keep you updated on those in the future, of course. No matter how you slice it, though, it is getting cold, and I'd say this, if anything, is what deserves the hype as we go into the next several days, as look at what's coming here across parts of the northern and central U.S. By the time we get out of Monday into Tuesday, already colder than average air, especially from Montana down here to Oklahoma, points in between, as well as on over here into the Midwest. 30, 40, even 50 degree below average anomalies indicated by this big area of pink, and it's already colder than average all the way over to the east coast, and this is as a result of cool air pushing in with an Arctic blast behind that most recent winter storm, which unfortunately lost so much devastation in some parts of the central and eastern U.S. as well, from flooding to severe weather. Prayers continue to go up to folks from that, and if anybody's displaced, this cold is not going to help with that either. Even with the Helene victims, of course, that are still displaced in western North Carolina. Cold expanding even further east behind the winter storm coming this week, and that's going to mean pretty much from Nebraska and Kansas all the way over to Virginia and North Carolina, we are 30 plus degrees, or 30 minus, depending on how you look at it, below average as we go through this week. Let's look at some of those numbers here with the National Digital Forecast Database. With that being said, the last main thing I want to do in this video is break down the day-by-day temperatures from Monday through Wednesday at least. We can talk about temperatures beyond that in a future update video. Let's talk about the mornings and the afternoons here, as this is of course very serious cold that's going to impact some areas, especially north of this line right here. Monday morning is going to be a big concern from Montana through Wyoming over to Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, around 10 or below around and north of this line, and many spots on up there closer to the Canadian border. This not even factoring in the wind and what it could make it feel like, closer to negative 10, negative 20, negative 30 the further north you go. Even on down towards the Carolinas, back over to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, we're in the 20s and low 30s as we go into our Monday morning. Cold expanding for everyone, but again, it's especially most prominent where these circles indicate record cold highs expected over parts of Montana, the Dakotas, and Minnesota as we stay in the negatives for projected numbers into our Monday afternoon. What about points east as you come through places like Kentucky into Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, many spots in the 20s and teens, especially the further north you go. Same goes with the interior northeast. We're even down towards a place like New York City having a struggle cracking freezing into our Monday afternoon. Meanwhile, a little bit warmer further south for now, down towards Arizona, New Mexico, over into Texas. We've got 60s and 70s, and that will extend back over to California as well for the time being. What about into Tuesday morning, the cold line extending a little bit further south? Any zones around and back to the northwest of this line can expect to be single digits or below, and of course in many spots it's going to be teens and 20s and 30s below zero as you get back through Nebraska, Iowa, and into Minnesota and the Dakotas. Those boxes for the morning lows indicating those record cold lows, circles with these afternoon highs indicating record cold highs, and you guessed it, all these single digits and negative single digits over parts of South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, into parts of Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri as we get that colder influence coming in behind that snow band through the day Tuesday. Very cold and staying cold even into the afternoon, and this is what makes it very dangerous. People, pipes, and pets are those things you want to protect, and keep in mind it's not even going to crack 20 around and north of this line, even into parts of the northeastern quadrant of the U.S. Tuesday afternoon. Still a little bit warmer further south, but that's going to continue to change as we go deeper into the week, as numbers like 12 get as far down to the south as places like Abilene, Texas, into our Wednesday morning. Still looking at negatives, and in some cases negative 20, negative 30 and up there through the north central U.S. Even some negatives in single digits being widespread by Wednesday morning up here to the northeast U.S. So if we do get snow to make it up here with that possible bomb cyclone that could be a little bit closer to the coast if it does turn into one, you know, it will have a very ripe environment for snowfall to tap into. That's to say the least by the time we go out of Wednesday into Thursday. Look at these highs Wednesday afternoon. Widespread record cold high temperatures across the Central Plains, and plenty of 20s and 30s even all the way over to the East Coast. That being said, though, that's all I have to say for today's update video. I'm right on the verge of 9,000 subscribers. I'd love it if you'd hit that button right down below. And guess what? If I'm already at 9,000 when you see this, you can help me get towards 10,000 by hitting that button if you have not already. I'll catch you next time in the next No Hype Forecast right here.
One Nation Web.